Welcome csc121 to ex7RandomNumberGuesser, and this is getting us started with using the random module and being able to use random numbers to make things a little more interesting. We're also going to throw in a while loop in here just because it's the only way to really count number of attempts and to keep repeating what's going on, other than just copying and pasting a bunch of if-else statements, which we don't want to do and isn't very efficient. So we're going to make this so we can control the number of times that people can guess a random number. And the way this is set up is there's one random number and then you guess at that same random number. It doesn't generate a new one each time. So if I run this here, it just says enter number from 1 through 9, and that was just easier to type on our keyboard. And I'll just start with 1, and that's wrong. I'll put 2. I'll try 3. I'll try 4. And I got them wrong in 4 attempts. So let me try one more time just to see if I can. So I'll start with 3 here. I'll start with 3. I'll go 4, 5, 6, and I still got it wrong in 5 attempts, or 4 attempts I'm doing here. So guaranteed, if I wanted to make sure you're getting it right, and when you do test it, I do recommend actually printing out your random number. So let me do it here. I actually have it commented out, but let me run it. And the number 6, so let me try 3, and let me try 6. I got it. It says you're right, and it says 2 attempts. Now you could change whatever feedback you have, but basically you're going to be wrong or no match or anything like that. But then you're going to say you're right or you guessed it or something when you get it right, and then it stops. So once you get it right, it stops, and you can control how many attempts if they keep getting it wrong. It's always going to stop when you're right. So we'll go over how to do that, and I'll do this from scratch. So I'll leave this here in case I need to look at something. So again, I'll go to settings here so I can make a new repel without having to go through that whole thing over there. And I'll hit OK. It's making a new Python 1. And we'll call it ex7RandomNumberGuesser with an ER. And I'll put a -v because I'm recording a video. And what we're going to start here with is we're going to import a random module. There's all kinds of modules we could import into Python, turtles, all kinds of things. And we're going to import one called random. And it is lowercase. So we're going to put random. There's different ways you can actually import. There's different syntax you could use to kind of save time, but we'll just use that to start. Import the random module. Now when we do that, we have to indicate the module name dot and the function that we're going to use. And we're going to use something that generates a random number. And it's called randint because it'll just make an integer between any two numbers that you put, and it'll actually include both. So it's kind of an easier thing to use. So I'll look at this one here. You can see the way it works here. We'll set a variable, and it'll be set to random.randint. So I'll just copy this and go back here, and I'll do that. And I'll use randnum, and you'll see in Python a lot of times I'll use underscores instead of using camel case with a capital N. So I'll use that. And you can see how this works. Random spells out the module, and then .randint is actually a function, and this is the where it starts and where it ends, and it uses both of these numbers here. So that's actually helpful. And you could do 1 to 10. You could use anything. So, and I'm also going to copy this because this will save me some time here. So I'll put this, and I'll put my guess after here, and I'll just make the variable called guess, and I'm going to use an integer because that's what this is using. This is creating an integer, so I'm going to create an integer. And actually, if you don't, it'll give you some problems. It won't work. So I'm just telling you ahead of time, use int here, because if this is a string and that's an integer, even if they match up, it's not going to match up, and you're going to wonder what's going on. So make sure you make this an integer since that's an integer. So when you test equality, they'll be equal in terms of their data type as well. So that's all we need here. We have a random number, and then we're just going to do an if-else statement. We'll do a conditional statement, and we're going to just say if guess, and we're going to use equals equals. Last time we used conditional statements, we didn't use that, but we have to use equal equals because this means equality. Equals means assignment, and this is for most programming languages. Equal means assignment, means you're assigning it to something. This means you're testing equality between two things. So if guess equals random, then what's going to happen? Then we're going to basically print out something like, you got it. You're right. I'll do it like that. I'll put in caps so it's really exciting when it happens. So that's what's going to happen if you get it right. And then if not, we basically just need an else. We don't need, because either you're right or wrong, so we don't need another elif or anything. So we'll do else, and then what's going to happen? It's going to print out wrong. We'll just say wrong for now. We'll put exclamation point to make it really, and then also I'll highlight this and I'll put quotes around it. So that's what happens right there. So, and one thing I like to do in here in the beginning is is after this, print out the random number. You might say, well, that's cheating. Well, I'm testing it to make sure it works, so it's okay to cheat to make sure it works before we let someone else do this exciting random number guesser. You can test it out yourself. So let's just see if this works first. I'll run this, and there, I know the random number is 3 that came up, so I'm going to just try 1, and it says wrong. And see, it ends here. I don't have any other choices, so I have to run it again to make it go again. So this time, if I choose 2, it says you're right. And that's not too much fun. We'd actually like to make it try a couple more times. Now, to do that, we could do this. We could put the guess here inside an else, so that if it says wrong, you get to try again. We could do that, except we'd have to keep copying the if-else a number of times. We could do this. I'll just do this real quick. We could copy this here, and then you could do it again. But then after you do that, we're going to have to repeat this. So you'd actually have to keep repeating this. And how many times you wanted people to guess it, you'd have to keep doing this. You know what I mean? You'd have to keep putting an else here, and then when you're done, I'll put a final else here. Now I'm doing it 2 times. There's an if else, and then this time, if you got it right, and then you're just wrong, and then kind of that's it. No more try. I could put no more tries, or no more attempts, or anything like that. So you could do that, and that's how you'd figure out how many. But then you're controlling the attempts. So if I run this, just see if it works. If I did, 8, I'm wrong. And then if I try 3, I'm wrong. And it says no more tries. But if I run it again now and I do 9, and then this time I'll put in 6 because I could see it is 6, it says you're right. So, you could do that, and you could keep, for as many attempts, you could keep just putting these if-else statements. That would work, as long as you just kind of edit the last one to make sure that that's it. Now, one of the things we wanted to do, just a little more of a challenge, and to learn a little bit more from this, instead of doing all these extra things here, this extra else we have in here, and this in here, is maybe keep count of how many tries we do with a counter, and then make it go a certain amount of times. So to do that, we'd actually have to make a counter. So I'm going to put a counter here, and I'll say count equals 0 to start. And then basically every time you guess, it's going to count. So we'll do that like count plus or equals 1. So that's our counter. It's going to add to that. And the only reason to really do this, to have a counter, so you could kind of display your counter at the end. What I could do at the end is just put a kind of an ending print statement here, in addition to you're right and wrong, that says, how many attempts. And I could put that in, curly brackets, and put count in there, and that should be my final count. Now, since we don't know if it's going to be 1 attempt or more than 1, I'll put an S in there, so that if it says 1, it won't say 1 attempts, but we'll do that at the end. Right now, we only have 1 attempt. So if I ran this right now, and I got it right, there it says you're right, and it says count attempt. And why does that say count? It's because I forgot my F here in my F string. So I'll have to do that. So let me try it one more time. And I'll put in 4, I'll get it right. And it said you're right, 1 attempt. So that's okay, but except we only have 1 attempt. That's all we're going to get here is 1 attempt. But if we wanted to get more than 1 attempt, and this kind of uses the count, what we could do is we could use something called a while loop. And we'll learn about loops. There's 4 loops which kind of iterate over a number of times. Or a sequence, and there's while loop, which kind of loops while a condition is set, or while a condition is true. And what we can do is put a while loop in here, and I could put it just around everything else, so that the guess is part of it, so that it keeps. We want the guessing as part of that loop. So I'm going to put while, and you just have to put while, and I'm going to put while, like if you want 4 attempts, I'm going to put while count is less than 4. That'll be my condition. That means keep going. So when it gets to 4, it's going to stop. So let me put that in here. Now, you can see what that did. When I hit enter, it indented this. That means all this stuff here should be indented. So I should indent this. Each thing should be indented. And the ifs have to be indented in themselves. So you got to be careful of what's happening here. And you'll see little wavy lines if it isn't indented correctly. This does not have to be indented. This could be out here because it's the last thing that's going to happen. Let's try this out because not everything's perfect yet, but while count is less than 4, so until this counter goes up till 4, it should keep letting us go through. So let's see what happens. And I'll say 5. That's wrong. I'll put 7, I'll put 9, and I'll put 3, and it said wrong 4 attempts. So that works. Now let's just try being right and then see what happens. So that works. That's kind of what we want for that. So let's just see if we go, and I'll put in 2, and it says you're right, and it says enter a number. So this is a problem because we want it to stop, and what's happening here is because the count's still true, it never ended yet, so it's going to keep looping until we get to 4 counts, even though I got it right. So how do we get it right? And what we could do is we could break out of the loop. And to do that, there's actually a break statement to break out of the loop. If it was a function, we could use a return statement, but we're going to use a break statement. It's just lowercase break, and that's if we get it right. So we'll put it in the correct portion, and we'll call it break, because we're going to keep trying until we get it wrong. So your wrong attempts will just eventually end when it gets to 4. But if you're correct, we want it to stop. So this will put a little comment here. We'll break out of loop and end guessing. So that's what that's going to do. So that break will do that, and that works with a loop. Break works with a loop. It will not work with if-else statements. You can't just break an if-else statement with this. It has to be in a loop. So just be careful with that. Even though this is in the if, it's really breaking the loop. It's breaking this condition that's up here. So let's try this out in here. Let's just take a look at what we have so far. And again, this is our cheater. This is, cheating here, to see random. And eventually we'll turn that off, but we're cheating right now to see it. So we have our random number generated, we have a count starting, and then our guess is happening within this while loop. You can see kind of the way it indents, so everything that's happening in here. So let me hit stop, and then I'll start it from the beginning again. I'll test it both ways, and I'll just hit 3 and see what happens. There, you're right, and it took 1 attempt. So I'll try it one more time. I'll get a couple wrong here, and it's wrong in 4 attempts. So that's basically what we want. And you could put an if-else statement. I think I did it in one of the things where you could put 2 statements down here. If the count is less than 2, you can use attempt. You could be a little like more detail oriented. You could say if count is less than 2, which would be 1, you could say print attempt, and then this one could be attempt, and then I'll put else and make sure I pull this back to the margin because they should be even with each other, and I'll put that one there, and this one is attempts, and I'll put it without the parentheses. So if you want to be a little more detail oriented instead of just using the s in a parentheses, you could do that. So if the count is less than 2, it'll say attempt. Otherwise, it'll say attempt. So most of the time, this is a rare occasion, but if I got it right, and what did I do here? Less than 2. Oh, I forgot the colon. So it's a conditional statement. I got to have my colon there, and it kind of pointed out right where it was at. So I knew that's what. It just said syntax. It didn't say what it was, but when I looked there, I saw that I didn't have the colon. So let's try that out again, and this time I'll put in 4, and it says 1 attempt. And if I do it again, I get all the numbers wrong. It'll say attempt. So that's all we want. So this will kind of build up to our rock, paper, scissors things because we'll be using random numbers. We'll be using if, else. We may use a while loop. I'm not sure if we will or won't, but we'll be using a count and we'll be outputting statements. So this will be kind of building up of what we're going to do. So that's random number guesser. It's not really that hard. It's just some new concepts here. I did another version where I did a function, then I actually ran a function inside a function, but I'll leave that out for now because this was probably easier. There wasn't a lot of complicated code, and it was kind of easy to understand. And by putting a break in there, it was easy to break it when we wanted to break it. So that's ex7 random number guesser. And make sure you just, share it, copy the link, and put that under ex7.